Good night, everyone. John tonight. God is good and God is good all the time. My name is John Major. He give you a word on tonight, and he still is talking about David. It's gonna come from Psalms 27, verse 1 through 14. Now David was fearless. When we had to fight that giant, David was fearless. So David was fearless and he had confidence in God. That's why he was able to go out there and beat that big old giant. That giant was up here, David was like this here. He went out there fearless and he had confidence in God. So the Lord, he said, now David said, the Lord is my life and my salvation. Who should I fear? The Lord is a stronghold in my life. Of who shall I be afraid? So he said, who should he fear? He said, who should he be afraid? We know he was not afraid of that big giant. So David, who wrote this song, had many enemies chasing him at one time or another. He was no stranger to danger. But he also knew that God was powerful and knowledgeable enough to interfere at any time. So he might have to harm him, and he knew that God could interfere on his behalf. Now he knew that God had plans for him. That he waited 20 years. When God had anointed him when he was like 17 years old. Excuse me. When he was 17 years old, God had anointed him. And he was under Saul. He kept running for Saul. So it was like 20 years. That's when he prayed to God. He said, God, you promised it. You promised that you was going to have me a king over the Israel. But I'm catching myself running from cage to cage. So his prayers had went through. So in this regular statement of trust, he put his faith, in the hands of God, who would be his stronghold. Because see, David had it hard. Now he loved his parents, not love his parents, but his parents just turned them over to Saul. So when the wicked advance against me to devour me, it is my enemies and who will stumble and fall. So David expressing confidence, that his enemies will not succeed. He expressing big confidence, because he said he confidence that his enemy would not succeed, and if they try to attack and destroy him, David is sure that they will fail. So David has so much confidence. He has so much confidence that they will not succeed. And if they try to destroy him, he said they will fail. Because he held confidence in God. For as evildoers, David and dedicate, they are not just as enemies, but God enemies as well. So by them keep on it's just like they keep on chasing after David, keep on trying to destroy David, keep coming against David. They're making themselves the enemies of God. So though armor besieges me, my heart will not fear. Though war break out against me, even then I will be confident. Because we know David. David wrote this song because he was just so confident when he had to fight that big giant. He had confidence. But anybody go against a big old tall giant, he had to have confidence. So David had confidence that he didn't need to be afraid. So he had confidence that God would protect him, and it was the matter of the heart. So he had so much confidence. That's why he was able to go out there and fight against that big old giant. So one thing that I ask from the Lord, this is only do I seek that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life. To glaze on the beauty of the Lord and to seek him in his temple. So David's priority in life was his relationship with the Lord. Now, although David was in the wilderness, seeking refuge from his enemy, David's heart was in the tabernacle, seeking, the beauty of God. Now, David was in the tabernacle seeking the beauty of God, and he launched to return to the tabernacle and spend his rest of his life in worship. Now see, while David was running and he was going from cave to cave, he still was seeking God. He was still worshiping and praising God. You know, that's why when he was in them caves, that's why he had time to keep on writing. You know, song. He had so much song. You know, between him and David. You know, they wrote these songs, and he was writing, but always running, always on the run. You know, not because he was scared of Saul, to keep from hurting Saul. You know, because anytime he can break an animal neck, what you think he could have did with Saul? You know, so for in the day of trouble, you know, he will keep me safe in his surroundings, and he will hide me in a shelter of his tabernacle and set me high upon a rock. You know, so that's what David said. Now, David said God wishes to establish, you know, over his life a praise. And it is God's desire to bring you into his very dwelling place and shelter, hide him. You know, because see, he constantly was running and hiding, you know, worshiping God. And God was still sending him here and sending him there, you know. God was still sending him to all different places. So he was still working and collecting wives as he was running. So then my head will be exalted above the enemies who surround me. At his tabernacle, I will sacrifice with shout of joy. I will sing and make music to the Lord. You know, he's the Lord playing that music. He was playing that music for Saul. You know, so we can learn, you know, from David, one key to facing our fear. You know, David escaped the pressure of fear and warfare by retreating into God's holy presence. You know, remember, he was just kept constantly was worshiping God. You know, saying the tabernacle, he proclaimed that I will sing and make music to the Lord. Praise and worship can help to take our mind off our fear. You know, a lot of time, all the time, I'm always listening to my gospel and see the words of the gospel. Sometimes it will help you, it will encourage you. You know, so that's why that's why certain songs with the right words, you know, that's what you want to listen to. Because it will, you worship and listen to songs, it will help, you know, to take our mind off our fear. You know, by placing our thoughts on our powerful God. You know, so hear my verse. When I call, Lord, and be merciful to me, answer me. You know, so lately, you know, I've been meditating. You know, we really supposed to do it on a regular basis. You know, but a lot of time we be so busy. And time we get in the bed, we tired. You know, so with the days that I'm off, the next day I try to meditate. That's the only way you can get a clear mind and in hearing his words and his guidance. You know, so we often run to God when we experience difficulty. And I'm telling you, don't just run to him for difficulty. You know, be like David and Daniel. Daniel was praying 3 times a day. You know, we have to pray regularly. You know, we have to be in God's presence at all times, not just when we have difficulty. You know, we have to make the effort like Daniel and David did. You know, constantly keep on praying. You know, often we run to God when we experience difficulty, but David has saw God in his presence every day. That's what we're supposed to do every day. You know, but when trouble come his way, he was already in God's presence. And see, that's the thing. You know, I be starting, then I stop, be so busy, drained, got to start back again. But being spiritual, we have to constantly do it on a regular to stay in God's presence. You know, David said he prays to God on a regular basis. You know, so when trouble do come, you know, he already in God's presence. You know, and see, that's the thing. You know, that will help Daniel. If Daniel got in that limelight, God already heard his praise. He already was in God's presence. You know, so in God's presence, you know, and prepare, you know, to handle any test. And see when I pray and I fast, you know, you feel like you're in God's presence. You know, and that's why, and that's another thing. We have to dress. Remember, I put that out too. We have to dress with the armor of God, and when you can feel like you're in the presence of God. So when trouble comes, like David said, you know, you're already being God present. So and you'll be able to handle in a test that trials that come your way. So believe, can call, believer can call to God for help at any time. But sometimes we may call only when trouble comes. And that's what we have to do. We have to call on God and be in His presence every day. We can't just do it when trouble comes and then expect for a speed deliver, to come. My heart said of you, seek His face, and your face, Lord, I will seek. Now, David knew the Lord had wanted him to seek His face. And it is encouragement to believe, to seek the Lord. And a lot of time, God will show you His goodness. I remember, I can't think of a couple names right now, but it was back in the Old Testament. A lot of time. I think it was with Moses. Moses saw the background, but a lot of time, sometimes you're getting God present. When you are in that regular space of praying, and sometimes God will show you His goodness. He did that to one of them in the Old Testament. So do not hide. So they were telling God, do not hide your face from me. He said, do not turn your servant away in anger. He said, you have been my helper, Lord. Do not reject me or forsake me, God, my Savior. I see that's David's expression. So the Lord loved hearing our prayers, or dependence, on depending on Him, because He is capable, willing, and eager to answer us with grace. And see, that's what David was saying. He said, hide not your face from me and turn not your servant away in anger. You've been my help. So David saying that God being His help. And he prayed to God and he said, God, don't turn your head. Don't turn your head on your servant. So David said, though my father and my mother forsake me, the Lord will receive me. And see, what he's talking here, many have had sad experience, of being forsaken, by their own father and mother. But this may happen because of a broken home, differences of belief, abandonment, often leave children with emotional scars, and see, that's what it was. When David was 17 years old, when David had first got anointed, and Saul had called for David, because God had left the evil spirit on him, and David was the only one to play the music and calm it down, But David, father, did not offer. He did not say a word. When Saul said, give me David, he just shipped David over. And see, that's the thing, David feel a type of way, that his father did not fight for him to stay, did not even ask questions of why you want him to go. You just ship him on. And see, a lot of time when we do things to kids, when they're small, they grow up and they don't remember, they don't forget nothing. David ain't forget nothing. He didn't forget how his father just shipped him over to Saul. He didn't even ask Saul no question. Just pack himself up and just give him to Saul. So that's why he said he felt forsaken by his father or his mother. And this may happen because of a broken home, differences, of belief, disabandonment, often lead children with emotional scars. And a pain may linger, along into adulthood. And sometimes they get to be adult and still be holding on to something that happened in childhood. So God can take the place in our life of anyone who had been abandoned. So that's why he said his mother and father forsaken him. So now he feel like his parents forsaken him, just ship him off. But he said God can take the place of our lives, and anyone who have been abandoned us, who abandoned us. Now teach me your ways. Now he said, Lord, teach me your way, Lord. Lead me in the straight path because of my oppressor. So David had a lot of people oppressing him, not just on his son. You know, he had other people. He had so many enemies. Not on his son. So David had prayed for guidance from the Lord. Attaining godly knowledge and smoothing out the path. Now sometimes it seems like the right way can lead to disaster. And so that's why a lot of time, I'm waiting on God guidance. And a lot of time when you waiting on God, like Abraham wife, she wanted to take matter into her own hand and made a disaster. And so that's what they're saying here. Once you try to take a path on our own, like Abraham wife did, we're gonna make a disaster of the situation. Because that's what David said. We have to wait on God. Do not turn me over to the desire of my enemies. For false witness, rise up against me, spreading malicious accusation. So I didn't even know, they always was talking about that. I know, remember, David came across this mean man, Gabriel's husband, and he wound up marrying his wife, because he was just mean and stuff like that to David. So the David described a false witness. They had been spreading lies about David. And they had sworn to kill him, but this might have rather, to Saul. But early on in David's life, also David's own son who led a violent rebellion. Now, at one time, David was running from his own son. His own son was threatening him. So I remain confident of this. That the we will see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. Now David said, I remain confident of this, that I will see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. Now he waiting to see the goodness of God. So the land of the living, meaning this life or the time while I am still alive. David was going through a trial. Present life, God will see him through it. So wait for the Lord. David said, wait for the Lord. David said, be strong, and take heart and wait for the Lord. Because, David had to wait 20 years, to be the king. And that's what he's saying. He said he had to wait a long time, to get the promises that God had promised him. But he got the promises because he had to wait. And so he's telling us sometimes we have to wait on God. David also reminds us to wait for the Lord. Be strong, take heart, and wait for the Lord. Though God's answer may not come when or how, we expect it, but we can trust that he is more faithful than even past. We see that, this is, he had a good relationship with God than his own parents. His parents were so willing to ship him off. So in spite of anything, that can happen, God will be there, for us. He will be there. We hope to trust. We will trust and find safety for our soul. And since that is the case, who on earth, who we should fear? That's what David said. We got to have confidence. I'm talking to myself. We got to have confidence. We have to have faith, and we have to be fearless. So if we got all that going on, who on earth should we fear? So that's what David was saying. That's what David was saying. Who on earth should we fear? Because with God, we can be fearless. With God, we can be protected. With God, guiding us on our path and not jump and try to do it on our own and cause disaster. And that's why David said, you have to wait on God for the proper guidance. He had to wait 20 years, and then the guidance came, and so that's why he said, wait on the Lord, because he had to wait, and he got the promise that God had promised him. So that's all the word I have for you on tonight. And we see that David had to wait a long time. He had wait on the Lord. And it's like he said, sometime the path, the path road might be so long, but he's saying still wait on God. Because we see the disaster that Sarah did. She had a slave man and just throw him on her husband. That's why the Israelite had to go into slavery, because she took her slave, and try to give her own son. And that was turned out to be a disaster, because when a woman had the baby, the woman didn't want her to raise a child. The woman wanted to raise her own child, so that was a total disaster. So then what she had to do? She had to pray and had to wait on God, and she had to wait on God. And that's when God give her the proper child, that's supposed to be the promised child. That's what God wanted her to have, the promised child. And she jumped and wants to have the slave woman child, but the slave woman did not want to give her her child. She said that's her child, and she wanted to raise. So Sarah was back to square one again. That's why David said, don't jump on the path